stag party? What happened to the baby shower?
Well, I guess Fred'd feel kind of funny asking men to a baby shower, so he's going to call it a stag party.
Oh.
Oh, now, Lucy, don't be silly. You want Ricky to get well, don't you?
Sure, I want him to get well. But I'd like to know what kind of medicine he's using.
I just wanted to let you know about my study group.
Oh, don't be a fuddy-duddy. I'll be your study buddy.
I'm about to embark on one of the great challenges of my scientific career.
This work right here is going to change history.
I think this is going to be our greatest mission.
I don't have time to study. I'll never get into Stanford.
I got big plans for you tonight. I got maps, I got charts. I'm going to see you through this because my credibility is on the line.
It's at this point that you'll want to start taking notes.
Welcome to the Sitcom Study, the podcast where we contemplate the TV shows we grew up with and search for the truth and wisdom within the tropes and cliches. And Amy, what is the trope we're talking about today?
Today, we're talking about those parties that you throw right before somebody gets married.
The stag do, I assume, is to what you refer.
Stag night or hen do. We have bachelor and bachelorette parties and sometimes baby showers, too.
Bridal showers, baby showers, yes. We went into this. Our official trope is bachelor parties.
Right.
But as you have suggested, as we got into the episodes, we've got some real good ones here, but a little kind of loosey-goosey with the trope. Like I said, we got some showers. We got one episode where we don't even really get to see the bachelor party. We just got the fallout of it.
Right.
But yes, we're going to be talking about sitcoms having to do with bachelor parties. This is another one that is a trope on TV because it's a trope in real life.
Yep.
I feel like I have a fair amount to say about bachelor parties. What is your experience with this very, I'm going to say, sort of sociologically interesting artifact of our culture that has changed, I think, in the course of our lifetime?
Yeah.
The bachelor party. What is your experience with that?
Or bachelorette, right? So I have been a best woman so I've been in the groom's side. So I myself have thrown a bachelor party.
Which we should say, of course, we'll get into this more in the crux of the episode, but that in itself kind of flies against the tradition of the whole notion of the bachelor party and the groomsmen and everything as like, it's all very gendered and very separated traditionally, but continue.
So I have planned and thrown a bachelor party. Mm-hmm. I have attended many, a hen do, as it were. I myself have had a bachelorette party. Mm-hmm. So I've dabbled in all of the various gendered and non-gendered.
Now, do you want to give us, to whatever extent you're willing, what was your bachelorette party like? This is early 2000s, I assume.
Yes, early 2000s.
So, what did this entail? Were there strippers? Were there penis hats? Were there?
There were definitely like penis lollipops and like penis like necklaces and, lots of little penis accoutrement that we were wearing for sure. We went to a bar that's like a dueling pianos bar that you get to sing along. Okay. And so, of course, because that's totally me. And we had a blast. It was sitcoms would have been bored. It would have been a very boring sitcom.
Not that scandalous.
No scandals, none of that. And same with the other bachelor and bachelorette parties that I've been a part of. Now I've run into bachelor and bachelorette parties while I was out on the town that I was not a part of that were having those types of nights.
Yeah, I have never been married, but I have been the best man at only one wedding. For better or worse, I tend to dodge the bullet because a lot of my friends have brothers or someone else who would sort of slot into that spot. But I was the best man at my brother's wedding. I sort of loosely planned the bachelor party along with a couple of his friends. And of course, I've been to a handful as a participant. This is something that I really do feel like over the course of our lifetimes, the sort of, what would I say, the societal pressures on young men to sort of like be a certain way and have a certain bravado and just like a very sort of specific kind of debauchery and masculinity and all that stuff. I think really has softened a little bit over the course of the years that we have been adults, and we'll really see that in these shows. So, like, at the time that I was a teenager, I really bought into, like, whether you like it or not, a bachelor party is going to involve strippers, maybe sex workers of some kind. Like, it's got to be totally crazy. And indeed, all the bachelor parties that I went to and the bachelor party I helped organize did at least have some aspect of that. There was never the main event.
Right,
we would do like kind of a bar crawl.
Right, and then you end up at a strip club.
Yeah, there'd always be some kind of stripping thing involved. Otherwise, it's like, what are you doing? You know?
So I got yelled at not by anybody who was in the groom's party for the one that I organized. The groom's son was in that as well, and he was like not 21. So, you know, I mean, I guess could have gone to a strip club, but that would be weird to take your kid to a strip club. So, it's
weird enough just going with your friends.
Friends outside of like our tight group of friends who are like, you know, friends from high school or whatever who are in our fantasy football league were giving me shit for not planning strippers for this party. And I was like, the groom specifically said no strip clubs.
Yeah,
it makes me sad. Same as Parks and Rec Ben says.
And by all means, like, no shade to strippers,
have
sex
a good
workers,
time.
people who like strip clubs. Yeah, but the truth
I like strip clubs. I think they're fun, but it doesn't make me sad though. I sort of struggle with the like society has changed in this way. I don't know if society really changed. I think there was a very bro culture that was kind of happening in the 90s. And I mean, and prior to that too, definitely. But like the 90s and the early 2000s, definitely that like bro culture was very forward. And I think that has sort of subsided.
Yeah, exactly.
So those of us who are like, I don't care about having strippers at my bachelor party or my bachelorette party, I don't care about that. Like, that's also an okay thing. Like what you were saying before, where there was like this machismo that you had to do that when it was a bachelor party. I think that pressure has gone.
That's exactly what I'm saying. When you say, people yelled at me and made fun of me for not hiring bachelors, like, in 2006 or whenever that was, like, absolutely. But that's what I'm saying now. The thing that we see in Parks and Rec that we're going to talk about, where Adam Scott's character is like, I wanted my bachelor party to be board games and stuff. I feel
board games and beer. I'm like, yes, that sounds like fun.
I think prior to relatively recently, you would, like, I'm sure lots of people did that.
Well, and there's always the one friend who's going to be like, what do you mean, no strippers?
Yeah, but nowadays, I think that friend would come across as lame. Like, I think the tide has shifted. And again, if you like strip clubs, great. But I don't think that most people would be, like, lambasted for not wanting to go to a strip club in the year 2024.
No. I don't think so either. But I also think both are fine.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I feel like people are like, whatever.
The last sort of social or political thing I'll say before we get into the episodes is the other thing that I think is at the heart of this is that the sort of the weird deception that goes into the bachelor party. The idea that, like, you can't let your fiance know what we're up to.
That's the part that comes up in these episodes that I have always found problematic about these gendered events.
As hell.
Anyway,
it's this idea of like, you're gonna laugh it off with your girlfriend, and she's gonna say, don't get it, don't do anything I wouldn't do, and you're gonna, you'll give her a little story or whatever, but you won't let on as to the real extent of what we get up to. It's more of that, spouse as adversary, spouse as policewoman or something that just is, it sucks. And so, again, I feel like that's something that has, sort of softened or changed.
Yeah, I think hopefully with, increased equality, it's led to a bit more less toxic relationships, I would hope, going into marriage.
All right, so what's our lineup? What are our shows?
We are watching I Love Lucy, Season 2, Episode 14, Ricky Has Labor Pains, All in the Family, Season 2, Episode 24, Maude, Martin, Season 3, Episode 25, The Bachelor Party, and Parks and Rec, Season 5, Episode 10, Two Parties.
Yep, we got a nice big date range here, going from the 60s into the 2000s
50s,
or 2010s.
Right? I think this
maybe
is 53.
Late 50s?
This is like 53,
late. Fair enough. Yeah, so look, especially in these first two, we're going to have lots of socio-political stuff, lots of gender roles here to discuss. This whole episode, the sort of catalyzing situation is going to be Ricky is jealous of all the attention that Lucy is getting because she's pregnant, right? It starts with him on the phone going, nothing's wrong with Lucy. She's just having a baby. Don't worry about her. And yeah, that's what's going to sort of start this whole thing.
Yeah. And I would say he's not necessarily jealous of the attention that she's getting. He's jealous that she's busy with all of these things and not able to live up to her wifely duties and make him dinner and pick up his laundry and do all the things that she normally does for him. So you want to talk about some gender roles, we get them right out of the bat with this, with Lucy apologizing profusely for not being able to make his dinner or have time to make him lunch.
Yeah, when she suggests, what if I made you a fried egg sandwich?
I was like, that sounds delicious.
Yeah, he won't dignify it with an answer. He just looks away like, are you fucking suggesting that there will not be substantial protein in this meal?
Potatoes for dinner.
Yeah, it is wild. But yeah, that's the whole thing. She's pregnant, and so she's neglecting her duties. And then what? This leads to Ricky getting sick, basically,
right.
And
he
coming
gets
down with
the
this
man flu. He gets the sympathy pregnancy pains.
Yeah, basically, it comes down to him in bed, dressed up like little boy blue or something with his little bonnet and his little pajamas.
He's got a damp towel on his head in case of fever, and he's in pajamas that have a pattern that looks very much like a little boy, in dino pajamas or something. They've got the little collar, it's very cute. And so the episode opens and we've got Ricky's on the phone with Fred, and he's like, yeah, come on over, bring a couple of guys, we can watch the game here. No, Lucy won't mind, she's fine. Like you were saying, she's just pregnant, she's not, she's just having a baby. Because he doesn't say she's just pregnant, because the sponsor of this episode is Philip Morris, and Philip Morris and CBS would not allow the word pregnant to be said
for
the entirety of this. So later on in the episode, we get a moment where they're reading a news article, like a newspaper clipping that Fred brings downstairs and is like, hey, Ricky, you made the paper. You made, this guy's column. And this guy was a real gossip columnist who, in fact, broke the news of Lucy's first pregnancy. Because the lab that ran the test leaked it to him, and he found out before Lucy and Ricky found out. So they read in the paper that they were pregnant. And then that was in 1950. That was 3 years before this, and she miscarried. So super sad all around, but all the hard feelings or whatever had died off by then, because now we're 3 years later. She's properly pregnant, even though we're not allowed to say pregnant. And they are name dropping his column in the show. So, but in the column, it says she is infanticipating.
Wow. Okay.
And it's the portmanteau of infant and anticipating.
I get it. That's like preggers in the
right,
50s.
Exactly, because they're not allowed to say pregnant. Although they're allowed to smoke throughout the whole episode because Philip Morris is sponsoring, and she is getting ready for the surprise baby shower, and she is setting cigarettes around.
To be fair,
all over the place.
She doesn't actually smoke.
No,
I was
other
dying to
people
see if
smoke
they were
in her
gonna
presence,
see,
though.
If we're going to see that, and she's just always holding cigarettes. This is also another show where they're not allowed to show them having only one bed, right? So it begs the question.
That went up until the 70s. That was true.
But it begs the question: how did they get pregnant in the first place? But
all parents did. They moved the beds together. Duh.
Yeah. So, this is all sort of building up to Lucy's having a baby shower. This is another sort of recurring thing.
Yeah.
Right, a surprise, but not a surprise, because she explains to Ricky that her baby shower is going to happen. It's a surprise. Well, if it's a surprise, how do you know about it? Oh, well, I got to get my makeup on and everything. I want to be surprised, but not surprised.
Right. I don't want all the girls to show up and my hair's in curlers and I'm in my house coat and the house is a mess. And so they all called and individually and told me that there was going to be a surprise. And he was like, well, why didn't I know? And she was like, because it's a surprise. And he's like, all right, well, I guess I'll go watch the game at Fred's. Is there lunch? And she's like, oh, sorry, I didn't have time to make lunch because I've been straightening for this party. She shoos him out the door. Then he comes back later after the party. We have a little party scene. And then he comes back later after the party and he's got to go off to work and she's just saying goodbye to the girls and cleaning up, straightening up from the party. She hasn't had time to make dinner. He's like, would really love some, meat and potatoes. And she's like, sorry, haven't had time to cook it. And so he goes off to work mad. And then the next morning we get the scene where he's in bed and the doctor tells him immediately, you have no fever. You are suffering from
psychosomatic.
Exactly. All of your symptoms are the same symptoms that Lucy has because she's expecting. And you are, having those same. And he's not hearing anything of it.
Part of it, he had to, fend for himself dinner-wise. So to him, it's like open and shut case. I ate the wrong thing.
Right.
Because I had to, eat
Got
food
something
at
a
club.
bodega or whatever.
Yeah. And so it's just indigestion. And of course, being 1950, whatever, he's never going to acknowledge that he could have some sort of somatic pregnancy pains or something.
Oh, no. In fact, he shoos the doctor away and then he calls him back and the doctor's like, you know what you have? And he says some word that starts with a D. And he's like, that's more like it. And then the doctor comes out and tells Ethel and Lucy, here's what's going on. Has your husband been feeling neglected? And then Lucy's like, well, I didn't get to do this. And I felt bad because I couldn't pick up his laundry and I didn't get to get his dry cleaning and I didn't do his dinner last night. And so she's like, oh, we should do something. Ethel has the idea. Why don't we throw him a daddy shower?
This whole conversation is so absurd. There's a point where Lucy is talking to the doctor and her husband, again, apologizing profusely, saying, this is all my fault for being pregnant and forgetting to pick up his laundry and make dinner. And neither the doctor nor the husband correct her or say anything to that. They're just like, yes, agreed. This is your fault.
That's what happens when people get pregnant is that their husbands feel neglected.
Yeah. I wrote down Ricky is like Lady in Lady and the Tramp. At the beginning of that movie where she's set out in the backyard because the baby's coming. And so, the following conversation where Lucy and Ethel are like, all right, problem solving time. Obviously, the solution to this is to kowtow to Ricky's ego and throw him a baby shower so that he'll feel better. And then, I can go back to being pregnant for real and deal with all this.
So they enlist Fred, Ethel's husband, Ricky's friend who lives upstairs or downstairs. And he comes over. He thinks it's a grand idea, but he starts calling it a stag night.
Yes.
And that's because
they were saying daddy shower.
They were calling it a daddy shower. And he said, and Ethel explains that he's calling it a stag night because he would feel weird inviting other men to a shower.
His tough friends won't think he's cool if he invites them to a daddy shower.
To a daddy shower. So they're going to do it at the club, and Fred's got it all arranged, and it's going to be great. But then Lucy's like, wait a minute, what's a stag night?
Yeah,
Why are they calling it a stag night?
They get suspicious, and there's a part where they're explaining all this, the four of them, the two couples, and they say, oh, the local paper is going to cover this event. And Fred goes, wouldn't it be wonderful if we made the society page? And that, of course, gives Lucy and Ethel their idea for their solution to most of life's problems, just like the characters in Saved by the Bell. Disguise,
yeah, that's right?
When in doubt, disguise. Preferably a gender-bending disguise.
That's right. So Lucy and Ethel call the club and pose as reporters and tell Fred they're going to come cover the event for the society pages.
The stag night.
Yes. And so they, what paper did they say they were from? Oh, they didn't say, but they'll be here soon. Before
they arrive, we get a little taste of the stag party itself. And I feel like we should focus on that for a second, because once Lucy shows up, it's all her. But, we're going to get at least a description, if not the actual experience of a bachelor party in each one of these episodes.
Right.
This one is, again, the daddy shower turned bachelor party, and the sort of overarching joke of it is every one of his friends brought a single bottle of beer as their present.
Right. So all the guys come in and they're all standing around him and they're like, hey, this is so great. And they all have their hands behind their back. And I'm like, this is a weird little cluster of gentlemen. Yeah. And Fred's like, all right, guys, let's get the gifts. And so they go over to the table and they all kind of crowd around the table. And then they turn around and they're all standing in front of the table. And then Fred is like, here you go, Ricky. And the guys all move off to the side and the beers are all lined up, one beside the other.
Just a row of beers.
Exactly, because it's time for presents. And Ricky's like, oh, you guys, this is exactly what I always wanted.
Yeah,
Come on, everybody, have one.
Yeah, the one guy is talking about it in that way. He was like, I thought you could use it. I don't know, a little something. And then, of course, like, all right, everybody, let's open the presents. And everyone drinks the beer. I also want to say Fred looks great in his suit. I was noticing earlier in the episode when he's normally just lounging around in their apartment and stuff with his suspenders or whatever, he looks like one of these guys. Like, he looks like he's deeper than he is tall. Like he's so big.
He looks so much older than all of them.
Yeah, exactly. But then he puts on this suit for the bachelor party and it just totally like puts everything in its place and he looks good. Like when he's dressed up with that nice jacket, I was like, yeah, now you look like a dapper guy who's like looks totally normal for his age. So just wanted to shout that out. But yeah, then Lucy and Ethel show up incognito, and I think this is one of the funniest things we've ever seen in our podcast.
Oh, it's great. Like, they've got their fedoras on, their hair's all tucked up, they've got mustaches on.
I would describe it as like halfway between Monopoly Man and like one of the circus clowns that's like a hobo,
Yes. Well, and so that, like, Ethel says to Lucy before when they're planning this idea, she's like, what are you going to dress up as? Like an expecting gentleman? Like, that's not going to work. But so she makes it work. She does like, in The Wizard of Oz, when the mayor comes out and greets Dorothy and he's got that big round belly and he's wearing the plaid green vest. That is like what Lucy is wearing. And then she has a suit jacket over it. And she keeps playing with her pocket watch. She's got a little pocket watch. She keeps swinging around. So she's this like very like, big girthy dude.
Big round. Yeah. Kind of almost like Mario, like Bob Hoskins in Mario or something. Of course, yes. Conceal the female figure with just extra belly and
I mean, she has the extra belly though because she's pregnant.
That's true.
That's what it was. That's what they were doing.
But yeah, she looks so funny with the little mustache, the little glasses, and she's doing the voice, like the Little Rascals when they pretend to be a grown-up or something.
Right. They're trying. I mean, it's difficult as a woman when I try to make fun of Jay when I'm like, oh, I'm Jay and this is what I do.
The generic dumb guy voice that every woman does when they try to sound like a man. Yeah. Yeah, and she's not doing that. She's doing the scratchy thing instead. But
she does try to go a little deeper. I noticed she and Ethel both try to go a little deeper, but they had a little scratch. It's very funny.
And of course, this got me thinking, like, what would it take for me to not recognize you in a situation like this? Like, if you were to show up at the door and be
because like Ricky and Fred figure it out in like 2 minutes.
We get the funny ending. We're like, okay, goodbye, Lucy. And like on their way out, they let them know that the jig is up. But yeah, I'm just imagining like if you came to the door posing as like a Con Edison worker with a fake mustache and coveralls. And
I totally think I could fake you out.
Yeah, it is. It's just so, it got me thinking that like my sort of mildly autistic, like fleeting eye contact.
That's what I was just going to think. You don't look at people for very long, so you probably wouldn't notice.
It might take a while for me to realize. Like, I think it would be harder for you to pull off the voice change.
The voice change 100% would be very difficult. I would have to like come up with something.
Yeah, maybe if you went even higher.
Or did like a Cartman or so. Like that wasn't Cartman, but like doing like a Cartman, something like that. Something like that.
But yeah, it never stops amusing me when they do this. Saved by the Bell, any of these sitcoms where, a phony mustache and a hat or something is going to make you not recognize your life partner of the last, 17 years or whatever.
Right.
So obviously they call them out. Oh, how did you know it was us? Wah, wah, wah. And then what? It's kind of like...
No, that's it. Yeah. That's the end of the episode. I mean, it just, they're back in the apartment. And they're like, I think Lucy's in bed, right? We get the scene where she eats the sardines and the chocolate hot fudge and the pistachio ice cream. And so Lucy's in bed Ricky's coming in. It's the middle of the night. He's gone out on a run. And we get this funny little moment where she's like, did you get the ice cream? Does it have extra pistachios? And he hands it to her. And she's like, what's in that? And he's holding another container. Oh, it's hot fudge. And he pours it over. And then she's like, what about the sardines? And the whole audience is like,
weird pregnancy cravings.
Right. But because it's black and white, it all looks like...
It just looks like a sundae or something.
It all looks like that's exactly what she's eating. She did actually eat the sardines, but she ate it with mashed potatoes and gravy. That's what they poured in. It wasn't hot fudge. And we can only tell that because it's black and white. Like we didn't, you wouldn't have known when you watch the regular television, when you watch it on, regular tiny TV in the 1950s. But so she's eating this and then she lets it slip to Ricky that, I'm glad you're feeling better now that we threw that party for you because the doctor said you were having, and he was like, what? Because the doctor had lied to him. Right. And then immediately he's like, give me some of that. I need that. I don't feel good.
Yes. His psychosomatic symptoms return as soon as he realizes that this was all for his benefit. Yeah. So funny sitcom ending. They've both got weird pregnancy cravings. And I don't know. In terms of tracking the trope, it's funny. This wasn't really a bachelor party, it was this weird contrived thing. The men felt more comfortable sort of like giving it the auspices of a bachelor party.
Yes, because guys don't have showers. Like our friends were having a baby over the summer and they were having a baby shower and it was an all gender baby shower. It was everybody comes. And my parents have known this couple forever because, went to high school with one of them. And so they were invited and we're getting ready and we've got everything. And we're like, all right, Dad, let's go. And he's like, what are you talking about? I'm not going to that. It's a baby shower. And we're like, no, this one's co-ed, Dad. Like, you're coming.
Yeah. He also probably just didn't feel like going.
You have a seat at the table. Like, we had to RSVP for you. You're coming. Like,
So, it's funny how, with this, like the whole notion of a stag night has those connotations so that someone like your dad wouldn't feel awkward about it. But because, like we mentioned, this is a time where you can't even imply that a married couple sleeps in the same bed. So there's not going to be any discussion of hookers or strippers or anything like that.
No, of course not. But there was the suspicion, which is why Lucy and Ethel...
That's true. The sort of semi-unspoken.
Exactly. And it's the suspicion is there. What happens at those? I don't know. We should go check it out. And I think that's teeing up what we're going to see in these later shows where we are allowed to talk about certain things.
Definitely. So speaking of being allowed to talk about certain things, let's move on to All in the Family.
Season 2, episode 24, Maude.
Yeah, so we got ourselves a backdoor pilot.
That's
here,
right.
Very clearly. This was another one where, look, we should have said at the outset, there's tons of Bachelor Party sitcom episodes out there, so we definitely could have gone the way of just picking 4 episodes that were about guys having their bachelor party. But these first 2 just seemed so intriguing with the crazy I Love Lucy thing. And then the introduction of B. Arthur's Maude character that we kind of
not
felt...
the introduction. She has had, I think, 2, maybe 3 other episodes
the return
that she's been in. Yeah.
Of her character.
CBS executives liked her so much.
Yeah.
They were like, who's that girl? Let's get her own sitcom. And so for one of the last, I think this is like the last episode of season 2, or close to the end of season 2. They
always do that. They always put them at the end.
They did this as a backdoor pilot because she was going, like, that's the next season. I think it was like 73, 74, whatever season, her show was starting.
Yeah.
So this was the pilot episode and done as, just as you said, as a backdoor pilot.
Yeah, definitely has that energy that we'll get into where, just like we talked about in our backdoor pilot episodes back in podcast number 5 or 6, we just give the main cast the day off for 2/3 of the episode. And suddenly we're in a whole new set that for a random sitcom set has been like totally thought through, almost like it's for its own other show. And we're going to get into all of that. What I found so interesting is All in the Family, obviously, its whole sort of claim to fame is it's this political strife between this old school, grumpy, conservative Archie Bunker and his liberal, hippy-dippy daughter and son-in-law, Rob Reiner. And just, I didn't watch Maude. I knew what it was. But what I get the sense of from this episode is this is about Maude, B. Arthur, when she looks already like she's in her 60s, but she's probably like 24 or something.
Yeah, she says that her current husband, who's her fourth husband, is 48. So she's got to be in that vicinity.
Yeah. Middle-aged Maude and her adult daughter, both of whom seem to be very liberal, sort of like feminist people of different generations.
Yes.
And so this is going to get into the sort of intra-leftist disagreements, the different instantiations of feminism and the more subtle versions of the bigotry of condescension versus the outright racism of Archie Bunker,
Right.
And I found this really interesting.
Yeah, and so Maude is brought in to All in the Family on multiple occasions as this foil, when they've done all the, Sally Struthers and Meathead episodes that they can.
Yeah.
She's brought in as an even more liberal than they are.
But it's perfect because she's the lady Archie Bunker.
Yes.
Like her
but
whole
the other
persona.
side, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But it makes sense because he's grumpy about, he doesn't like people of other ethnicities and whatnot. She's grumpy because she's a woman and she's had to deal with this bullshit her whole life. So they're both reacting to the stuff that's around them and annoying them, or like worse. But
yes. They're so in the first episode when she was introduced, it was like, like Edith's favorite cousin or something like that was the name of the episode, something along those lines. Or like Maude comes to visit or something like that. They got in this whole fight because she was a staunch FDR supporter and Archie was not. And so that was like and I just think about these people being alive when FDR was alive. It's like the kids at school now are like, wait a minute, you were born in the 1900s? Yeah. And I'm like, that's what
Jimmy Carter was president, children,
right.
when I came into this
Same.
world. Yeah. B. Arthur declares herself a Hubert Humphrey Democrat at one point when she's defending her views. So yeah, basically, we get a little bit of Archie and Edith at the beginning. They're off to a wedding. This is going to be Maude's daughter, who I guess Maude is Edith's cousin.
Yes.
And so this makes the daughter a cousin once removed, or however that works. The daughter, again, this young woman. And so, after that first scene, we're going to shift to Maude's household, like I said, and really focus on them. The daughter, Carol, is marrying, I'm not going to just say a Jewish guy, the most Jewish man I have ever seen.
Really?
Like, when they finally unveil this guy.
David Green.
I say this as I'm Jewish myself. I don't know if that gives me a free pass or not. This guy makes Woody Allen look like freaking Dolph Lundgren or something.
That's so funny. I was like, oh man, I wonder if they'd be in trouble because I don't think they actually got a Jewish person to play this guy.
No. I mean, I don't know what this guy's ethnicity is, but he has that Judd Hirsch, that urban Jewish dude vibe about him. But to me, it was just so turned up and so extreme. But anyway, before we meet him, we get this little debate between Maude and the daughter where you sort of get the impression Maude has that kind of like, but some of my best friends are Jews kind of attitude,
right.
Where she's like, I can't be racist. I think Jews are great. They're the best accountants, they're the best lawyers, they're good at counting money, like all that kind of stuff.
She didn't go down the money route, but she was like, she said, I think they're the best doctors. That's why all of my doctors
and accountants, she says. She's steeped in stereotypes.
She absolutely was, and she was going down that way. And her daughter calls her out and is like, what you just said is anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
And she's like, what? No, it's not. Like, I'm saying how much I like them. And she's like, them?
Yeah. No, it is that thing of like, yeah, black people are great dancers. I'm giving you a compliment.
Like, why are you getting mad at me?
Yeah. Like, so, yeah, we're seeing, like I said, that very interesting subject where, the writers, the creators of this show are going, okay, maybe there's stuff we can talk about now that's more subtle than just the staunch conservative grandpa against the cool hip youth. You know,
Right.
It's got a little more subtlety.
Yeah, no, it is really interesting to kind of like Maude is of this generation, and she's like, I can't possibly be, racist or anti-Semitic because I'm not like Archie.
Yeah.
He is racist. He is anti-Semitic. You know what he's going to say. And like Carol, the daughter, does a perfect impression. She's going to be like, Jiminy Christmas. She's marrying what is it? She's marrying is it a Hebe?
I think he says Hebe later. I think he just says Jew because B. Arthur says she's marrying a man of the Jewish faith. She's trying to be all proper.
Right.
And he goes, he doesn't say Jiminy Christmas.
No, but
he
it's
says
something
some
like
little
that.
phrase.
Some little phrase. And Carol, like earlier in the episode, said exactly that. So they get this fun little play of like, this is what he's going to say. And it's one of those like classic Archie bunker kind of lines. But so Maude as a character is like, I can't possibly be racist because I'm not like Archie. That's a racist. And Carol's like, yeah, but also you can have, she's like, I'm not calling you anti-Semitic. I'm saying the thing that you just said was anti-Semitic, which I feel like is a conversation we're all having now.
Yes,
like,
people get defensive.
I'm not calling you racist. I'm saying that the thing that you just said can be racist. And like, let's talk about why.
Yeah, the idea that it has a benevolent spin to it, you're still making assumptions about people,
right.
And there's all kinds of implications to that. There's also a recurring disagreement where Carol is going to wear white for her wedding, even though it's a second wedding and she already has a kid. And she says, I'm wearing white because my mom wants me to. If I had my own way, I'd wear pink polka dots, right? So again, this is 60s, 70s, where we're getting into the thing of,
70s.
Yeah, generational split. Who cares about wearing white? Who cares about the imagery of purity and innocence and stuff?
Right. And Maude, as forward thinking as she is, as progressive as she is like, you're having a proper wedding because you eloped last time, and I've given out lots of gifts over the years, and we're going to get gifts for you. That's why I did what I did, which made me laugh because my former mother-in-law said the exact same thing when she added 15 extra people to our wedding list that none of us knew. She couldn't even remember. They were people on her Christmas card list. And she was like, their kid got married. I got invited. I sent him a gift. They're going on our list.
It's revenge, inviting somebody to your
right. It's
wedding.
like a revenge present.
Yeah. One thing I found interesting, well, a couple things. First of all, B. Arthur, the crowd goes wild when Arthur and Edith first show up and B. Arthur opens the door, lets Edith in, and just nonchalantly slams the door on
It
Archie.
was good.
It's very funny the way she does it, as though it's like she doesn't even see him. And yes, the audience explodes. It's very funny. But then, after this whole conversation that Maude and Carol have had, one-upping each other with the feminism and the progressive values, when Archie asks Carol, what's your married name going to be? She says, Mrs. David Green, which I just found so interesting that, okay, we're still doing the thing where you take your husband's first and last name and completely eliminate your own identity. And nobody has any issue with that being patriarchal, but we're going to debate about the color of the dress. Okay, still in the 70s.
Lots to unpack here. And what was interesting though, is that it was being presented just like All in the Family. They're always presenting these situations in ways so that you can think about it. Mm-hmm. Like that's what Norman, like, yes, his shows were shot on videotape and they look grimy and gross, but they always presented these real life kind of class struggles or like society struggles. And I love it. I love so much of this episode felt like it could be happening now with like, kids in their 20s or whatever in college and us as the old people. Like and also could have happened, 5, 10 years ago, 15, 20 years ago with us as the young people and our parents. Like these are what progressive means is that you're still looking forward. You're still thinking forward. So even though you consider yourself a progressive in your generation, time keeps a marching.
Yes, exactly. Yes, that's well said. That's what this show, sort of shows us. And so we eventually get the shower, right? We get all the ladies coming over again, just like in we saw the ladies, right, in I Love Lucy.
Yeah,
briefly,
the
right?
ladies.
So, yeah,
it was again. They came at the door, yay, blah, 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 and it's like this gaggle of women, and it's all blah, blah, blah,
all
blah.
coming at once. So I guess they all carpooled or took a bus or something. But yeah. So
hold on, before we move on, I just want to note that this moment that you were describing where Edith comes in and then, the door got closed and then Archie comes in. So the guys are going to go off and have a bachelor party.
Yeah.
And Archie's meant to go with them, but then he finds
he doesn't
out.
Want to.
Well, he doesn't really want to, but he's like, all right, whatever, I'll go with the guys because I don't want to be here.
Well, what he says to Edith, he goes, you stay here with your dopey friends. I'll go with them.
Right. But then he finds out that everybody's chipping in so that David, the groom, doesn't have to pay for anything, which to me is like a totally normal thing you do when you're
buying your friend dinner on his birthday.
Exactly. But he's like, that's when he uses the word heeb, and he's like, oh, of course, everybody has to chip in and he won't pay for his own bachelor party or whatever.
Yeah. He says, leave it to a heeb to sell tickets to his own party.
Right. Which I was like, yee. Like, I was like, I don't like it.
Pretty rough.
Anyway, so he decides that he's not going to that either. So they try to convince him to go back to the hotel. And he's like, oh, I'm not leaving Edith. Anyway, all of that is happening, but he decides not to go. But the reason I took us back to that moment was because this is the moment that I realized that Edith, she's tall.
Yeah.
She walks in and stands next to Maude, next to B. Arthur, who we know is tall, and they are eye to eye. And then Archie comes in, Carol O'Connor, is that right? And he is the same height as them. And I just have always assumed my whole life, because they look tiny when they're in their place, that that Archie and Edith were tiny people. Like the actors who played them were tiny, but you put them next to B. Arthur and they are just as tall as her, and they're taller than the guy playing the husband, and they're towering over the daughter, Carol. And I was just, my mind was blown. I just always thought of Jean Stapleton as like this tiny lady.
Yeah, I guess she's taller than she looks.
Anyway, so the guys leave. Archie goes back to the hotel. We get a few moments with the ladies and the party.
She says something. Carol goes, oh yeah, let him go to the hotel. Governor Wallace will be on TV. He'll love it.
B. Arthur says that. Maude says that. Yeah.
It just reminds me, it's same thing with Murphy Brown, where just like that Doonesbury humor, we're just going to embed all little references to politicians and stuff throughout the whole thing. It's just that kind of show.
Yeah, for sure. So they have the party, and we don't see much of that. And then we get David, the groom, and Maude's husband coming back in.
Yeah, we don't get to see the bachelor party, but we get the sort of aftermath of it, because they come back and they're like, someone called the cops.
Yeah, their
and
bachelor
shut down
party
the
got
party.
raided.
Yeah, got raided by the police, and then they somehow get on the subject of the girls at the party, and that's where we get what we were talking about at the very beginning, this whole thing of, oh, don't you know that guys have to cut loose at the bachelor party? And Carol, the bride, starts getting all upset at David, the fiance. Oh, what do you mean? How many of these girls were at the party?
Yeah, and he starts listing them off. He's like, well, there were the twins. Yeah, there were the twins. There was the belly dancer. There was the two brunettes. There was the redhead. Oh, the redhead. And then he names a couple others, and he's like, and then there was the redhead. And then the stepdad, Maude's current husband, was like, because Carol was like, hey, you said her twice. And he was like, oh, yeah, but she was the best. I mean, she was the champion. And so then we come to find out, David's like, everybody fools around at their bachelor party. So we find out that he has been fooling around with this redhead. She was riding him like a pony.
Yeah, it is. The phrase fooling around, I feel like, is a little ambiguous. Fooling around like having a few laughs and being silly, or fooling around like he had sex with her. Like, that term, like fooling around, messing around, coming to mean having sex, like hooking up, was later on.
Yeah, I think this still just means they were messing, like they were definitely like kissing and like getting, partially clothed, and it was inappropriate for someone who's going to be married tomorrow. So Carol gets upset, and he's like, and David's like, whatever, everybody fools around. Like that's what bachelor parties are for. And she's like, what are you talking about? And he tries to do that thing, and it works, where he turns feminism on her and says, you don't get to be mad. You're a feminist.
He says, what happened to your liberal values? Yes. And this
Right.
whole I
So,
thought you were a freewheeling.
Yeah. So liberal means you're allowed to cheat on me? Fuck you. This guy needs to go. Like, I am team fire David right now.
Yeah, exactly. Look, it goes back to a little bit of what we were talking about, where it's like, so again, fooling around. What exactly are you talking about here? You went to the strip club, like what? There's some mystery about the details, but I would say, yeah, it's a pretty shaky argument that he's making here. And
it's not an argument.
Well, yeah, his argument is like...
It's manipulative.
Yeah, he's saying that because we're young and progressive and stuff, I agreed it's manipulative.
No, he's saying because you're a feminist, you don't get to comment on me fooling around because I don't care that you used to fool around.
Yeah, free your mind, man. We're all this. It's the new.
That is the like. She's like, that's not the same thing. It's not a 1-to-1. She's not fooling around on him. She had affairs before she met him, and now she's been so that like that. I mean, you can see how angry I'm getting. It drives me crazy. It is an undermining of feminism that oftentimes feminists in the 70s would buy into because they still hadn't unpacked the patriarchy itself. It's the way the patriarchy is able to undermine feminism in certain ways. And it still continues to this day in many different ways. But it was just so blatant in that moment that I was like, what? And her being a feminist was like, you're right. I gotta let that go because we, live and let live, and we aren't committed yet because we aren't married yet. And I was just like, oh, what?
The whole thing is weird, but then it just takes a turn where it loses all subtlety, and he just does this total heel turn and becomes like a total retrograde villain, where it almost starts ringing false. Like the things that he starts saying that we're about to get to kind of make you go like, okay, wait a minute. Why was she even with this guy in the first place? Because what he does...
Because they haven't had these conversations. Because this is still in a time period where to be the cool girlfriend is to not talk about marriage and kids and all of this stuff.
Yeah, I guess that's what we're supposed to understand. But this guy, like, all of a sudden, he becomes Archie Bunker. Like, he starts going, oh, well, when you quit your job after you have your baby, what do you mean when I quit my job? Well, of course. I mean, you're going to be in the kitchen cooking my meals all the time. And he just sort of reveals that he has all of these assumptions about these very old school... This is what
marriage is.
Yeah, gendered things that she's going to do. And she's shocked. And yeah, all of a sudden, to me, it just plays like, have you two ever met each other?
Well, I mean, I think what we're meant to understand and what I took it as was that they just didn't talk about these things because they were living this great dating life, and they weren't worried about, all like what happens or what they believed in after you got married, because she's assuming that this is our life now and after we get married, and he's assuming that all of a sudden you get married and the woman turns into Betty Crocker and you turn into Don Draper. And it was so interesting because you have Maude in the background of this argument. And the way the argument kind of starts, or one of the middle parts of the argument that we haven't hit on yet, was after they kind of had the thing about the bachelor party and then that sort of settled down, he accidentally reveals, because he's been drinking a little too much, that he bought a house yesterday.
Yeah.
And Maude is like, he bought you a house. How amazing. And Carol is like, you bought a house without me? Like, you bought a house for us to live in. And then, and as she's trying to get those words out, he goes, you're going to love the kitchen. And she's like, I'm going to love the what? Yeah. And this is when all of the other stuff, like, well, you'll be in the kitchen when you quit your job.
That's when he explains everything.
It starts pouring out, and you see the stepdad, Maude's current husband, over at the bar area, just kind of looking at it like, I'm not wading into this. Like, this is...
that's what I mean. It's like, if you have had one conversation with Maude or Carol, it's like, what are you thinking? But yeah, he explains all of these assumptions, and then they basically call off the wedding. And like, we need to take a step back and rethink this whole thing. Yeah. Because we have these completely different worldviews. That's around the time that Archie shows up going, hey, I just called the cops on all these, loud
I
nuts
came to
jobs
collect
back at-
Edith. Well, and Edith has absconded upstairs because they heard Philip, the little 8-year-old boy, that's Carol's son from her previous marriage. They heard him cry upstairs. So we have all these contrivances to get the characters from All in the Family out of the, the acting space so that we can have a true pilot for these new characters. And so Edith's been upstairs. And she comes down when she hears Archie's voice, and she's like, "Oh, Archie, I'm ready to go." And Maude, it was so lovely, and saying bye, and they have a few little more one-liners between Maude and Archie, and then Archie reveals that he called the cops on this party at 11 p.m. because it had been going on all night, and they were so loud. And there were these girls running around all over, up and down the halls, and they were barely dressed. And that's when they realized Archie's the guy who called the cops on the bachelor party, which is why it got raided. And so then Maude is like, "You're the reason this wedding is canceled, because they never would have had this fight
In a cause
if
and
it
effect.
wasn't for you."
Yeah, in a cause and effect kind of way, Archie destroyed the marriage. But of course, Carol says, "No, you messed up the bachelor party, but it's my husband's."
Clearly, we should have had this conversation beforehand. And then the guy, the David Green guy, the fiance or former fiance, is like, "So I'll call you for coffee?" And she's like, "That sounds like a good idea."
Yeah.
Then he leaves.
When he leaves, Maude says to him out the door, she goes, "See you next week at the American Civil Liberties meeting." So that's what really crystallized it for me. Like, oh yeah, all of these characters are liberal, and so this thing of the intersectionality of like, it's going to be about her marrying a Jewish guy and then shift to the gender stuff. Like, it is all like, really interesting.
And then it comes back though, because they have in the middle of the fight, it goes into like an anti-Semitism.
It's really funny. Yeah. He says something.
She says something about like, "You're all like this."
She says, "That is an anti-Gentile feeling
that was
on
later.
your part."
Yeah.
And he goes, "We all feel that way." And then Maude and the rest of them all go, "Aha!"
Yeah. So it took like an anti-Semitic turn earlier, just a few sentences before what you just quoted, where she's like, "That's anti-Gentile." She said something. Carol said something about something about like, "You're all that way."
Yeah.
To him, and he's like, "I knew it. I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. My mother told me you're all like this. I knew it was coming."
Yeah, he says something about he got a bargain on whatever, the hotel or something. And she goes like, "Well, of course you couldn't resist a bargain."
Yeah, not the hotel, the house. That's why he bought the house without talking to her, because it was a great deal. And she's like, "Oh, of course, that's what it was." And so then they went down that. And it was just really interesting, because it was like, what happens with, lefties when we're like, "You're virtue signaling." No, you're virtue signaling. It was that same kind of moment. I was like, whoa, all right.
And it ends with a conversation between Maude and the daughter. She says something like, "Oh, I don't know if it's a cake, a present or something that Archie bought." And they say,
"Yeah, a wedding present."
Yeah, consider it a deposit for the next wedding. And so,
making fun of Maude because she's been married 4 times.
Right, but it shows you both of them, Maude and the daughter, have both been married multiple times. And it's really breaking down, this is around the same time, maybe a little bit later, that you have Happy Days episodes where the whole plot is, oh my God, Richie is dating a divorcee, where it still has that scandalous connotation. And so I totally get how, at the time that this comes out, here's our premise, a mother and a daughter, they're both divorced women, or one of them is newly married. I don't know how this thing with David Green turns out.
No, they don't. He never comes back again.
Okay.
And in fact, this actress, she's a New York theater actor. She didn't want to do a sitcom.
Oh, so she doesn't continue?
She doesn't. They hired another actress. And B. Arthur is on record saying that she liked the original better. And she was, the other girl, the other woman, played her daughter for all the seasons of Maude. She likes her fine, but she thought this Marcia Rod played it better.
That's funny. But yeah, I mean, you totally see how this would be an interesting and kind of edgy premise.
Yeah.
And, in terms of tracking the trope, again, now we're getting into, we didn't get to see the bachelor party, so there's only so much we can really sink into, but
we know that there was a girl riding the groom like a pony.
The whole thing of like what you do at a bachelor party is you fool around, quote unquote. You go and sneak off and have ladies come, and then you might get in the doghouse if the wife finds out about what you did. We're starting to get into that.
Right.
world.
And the sentiment, again, that everybody does this. Like, everybody does this at their bachelor party. Why are you mad?
Right. You would be some kind of weirdo to not, yes, have the hula dancer. Okay.
Belly dancer.
Yes. Moving on to Martin.
Season 3, episode 25, The Bachelor Party.
Yep, we've covered Martin a handful of times now. I think this is one of our big sort of pleasant surprises coming to revisit Martin.
Yeah.
I think, we both kind of remembered it vaguely from the 90s, but figured there'd probably be some rough stuff with the shenane, with the whole sort of 90s attitude. And we've come to find that they're really, really fun. It's maybe one of the best shows ever for giving the female lead as much fun, weird stuff to do as the male lead. And it's, I think, officially one of our favorite sitcoms at the Sitcom Study.
Oh, I think agree 100%. What I was kind of looking forward to in this lineup, and we didn't get a lot of Edith because obviously this is the backdoor pilot, but we have Lucy, Edith, and Gina.
And Leslie Knope.
But Lucy, Edith, and Gina are characters within the same world. Like, they have this a little voice, like they all do, like, oh, Ricky, or oh, Archie, and Gina's got Maude, like they all have that like thing, and they all are like larger than life in their physical comedy. I think that episode that we watched of All in the Family where Edith was literally running around the house, like back and forth into the kitchen and the living room. But I mean, especially Lucy and Gina, just the physical comedy, the relationship that is the two of them, and not really, the kids aren't around yet for most of the Lucy, and the friends that live in the same building and all that. But there's just like, as characters, I think Lucy and Gina are so similar. So I was so looking forward to watching a Lucy episode and a Gina episode and a little bit of Edith. We didn't get a lot, but for this lineup, and was not disappointed. There wasn't as much physical comedy in this as we've seen in our many other episodes, but there's a little bit.
Yeah.
And we're solidly in the era of the blooper reel that runs after the last ending scene. And we got some great Tisha Campbell vocalizing, like doing some opera singing and like whistle tones, man. She was hitting some high notes in the fun little bloopers at the end.
Yeah, that was weird. Yeah, this definitely, the Fresh Prince did that. A lot of the shows in the 90s, like the bloopers at the end. But this is going to be one where now that we're in the 90s, this is exactly what you would expect from a Bachelor Party episode. Begin the episode, all the guys are at Martin's house for the Bachelor Party. All the ladies are somewhere at with
Pam's
Gina
house,
and Pam for the Bachelorette party. There's all of the sort of deception that we were talking about before. Martin is telling Gina, oh yeah, don't worry, baby, we're having a magician come
the
over.
Entertainment's coming. It's a magician.
Yeah, exactly. That same sort of, weird, nobody's on the same page.
But in this time, though, we've got, like, the girls are given as good as they get, right?
Yes.
Because they have a stripper as well.
Yeah.
And Martin doesn't like that. And he undermines it, gets rid of the hot stripper, and sends some, like, dopey dumb guy over. And so this is only season 3, but there's a lot of other friends and characters in this that I've never seen before.
Yeah, well, I'm sure some of them are randos that they just brought in,
but
just
some of
day
them
players.
have a lot of lines for being like randoms, and they have already started moving away from Shenane.
Oh, yes, we'll see that. But yeah, we get, of course, Martin has his two friends, Tommy and whatever the other guy is, that
Cole.
Yeah, one of them's a tall, bald guy. One of them's a short, chubby guy. And then, a lot of the people at this party, it seems like it's like a costume bachelor party or something, or like they were coming from some weird other event.
No, there is one guy in particular. Well, okay, so there's two, but one guy that talks, and I can't even, like, looking on the IMDb, I can't figure out who this guy is.
You're probably referring to the guy who looks a little bit like Tyler Perry, but he's wearing a barbershop striped shirt and a wig that goes only around the bottom of his head, so he's got like long hair in the back, like a mullet.
But it's a mullet, but it's a mullet wig, but just the bottom.
Yeah, just
and
meant
it's
to
glued,
be worn with a cowboy hat or something.
I guess,
think.
but it's glued to his head in the same way that like extensions are glued.
I just thought it was like a strap.
No,
I just thought it was like a silly costume.
No, it's not. That's what I'm telling you. It is not a costume. Like this is this guy's look, and he looks insane. And it is, and it's red hair, so it's like red, kind of crimped, like wavy. Like remember the crimp machines that would like put that wave in it? That's what. And it's red, and it's just like attached around the bottom of his head, behind his ears, and it's glued onto his head. It's the strangest thing I've ever seen. I've never seen a man look like this. And then they got a white dude who's really, really, and so this guy with the like half a mullet, he has lots of lines. He's like a friend that is he's part of the show. There's another guy who's just like an extra.
Yeah, there's only one white
big
guy.
White dude, and he is wearing one of those Jackson 5 Afro wigs.
Yes, gigantic. Yeah, like a Halloween party.
Right.
Exactly.
He got from Party City, and I'm like, what? What is happening?
There's also one of the guys, like a big dude that's wearing overalls that doesn't look like he's dressed like
he's. But that's the guy that is like the dopey neighbor that they send over to be the stripper.
That's the same guy.
Yes,
sure?
that was what happened. There was no scene where we see Martin tell that guy to leave the bachelor party and go over to be the stripper, but we see Martin meet the actual stripper because he is a friend of Tommy's and he couldn't find the apartment number that he was supposed to go to, so he came over to Martin's apartment.
We get a little reference to House Party because Martin goes, "Oh, I didn't know Full Force got back together." Full Force is the rap trio, the three guys that are in House Party with them. I think that's what that's referring to, because the guy kind of looks like him. I was wondering if maybe it even was the same guy.
I thought he was making a bunch of references. Like he was teasing Tommy about how like good looking this guy was. And he's like, "Tommy, do you need to tell me something? Like, is your Jim gay? Like, what's going on? Like, you don't look like him. Like, you're not as built as he is."
Yeah.
And so then he realizes that he's the stripper for Gina's bachelorette party. And he sends him, he's like, "Get out of here. You're not going over there. Nobody's telling you where it is. Get out of here." And then the next scene we see is Gina's bachelorette party, and there's the big, fake cake, and this guy jumps out of it, and it's the guy from the bachelor party that was wearing
the big
overalls.
lumbering guy.
And he talks kind of like this in that voice that you said, all the dumb guys, like that we always do with the dumb guys. And Gina's like, "What are you doing here? Why are you," he's got a weird flower stuck to his head. And he's like, "Oh, Martin sent me over because he didn't like, how good looking the other stripper was."
Yeah. So we're kind of all over the place, but that's because this story is sort of like, again, the dueling bachelor party.
Right. They're
like
jumping
stuff
back and
going
forth.
on.
Yeah.
This one and this one. We've got edible underwear at Gina's bachelor party, which I have purchased for a lady at some point. Yeah.
Not me.
No, and you wouldn't want me to. Believe me, it's disgusting.
I don't want you to eat for roll up off of my butt.
What I was just going to explain is that, yes, what I learned back in the 90s when I bought these things at Spencer Gifts was this edible underwear, quote unquote, is just fruit roll-ups, like vaguely in the shape of underwear, but not even really. And so, I thought at first I got them for my friend Alyssa, but then I realized, no, I think I got her the naughty pasta in the shape of penises. I think I actually got my girlfriend in college the edible underwear. And within 10 seconds, we're just like, get rid of this.
This is so gross.
But so they've got that going on. My favorite part of Martin's bachelor party is they're retiring his jersey, right? And you see like a jersey up there. So
it says Martin and it's got 23 on it.
23, like Jordan's number.
Yeah.
But like, is it his sex jersey? Like, what sport is this from? Like, what is the
I think they're just
here?
making the joke that like that's it. And again, this is just like continuing this thread of like your life ends when you get married.
It doesn't look like a basketball jersey.
Yeah, it does.
It's a tank top like that? Okay.
Yeah. They just had it spread out. They had it mounted and framed.
Okay. I thought that was funny. Like, we're retiring his jersey of banging ladies because he's
and then
gonna
the
get married.
friend with the weird half mullet asks for his little black book.
Yeah, we get that. But then where we get our requisite sort of Martin slapstick silliness is in the speculative fantasies, you know, because both of them, Martin and Gina, are going to have their friends put ideas in their head, you know, that sort of give them last minute jitters or worries about the future. In Martin's case, it's going to be like, oh man, you're getting married, you know, another one bites the dust. Your girlfriend Gina, she's hot now, but, you know, pretty soon she's going to be obese and she's going to have
popping out kids. So she's not going to be able to lose the weight, and she's going to be fat and tired and cranky because she's having so many kids.
So we get, you know, it's not like Saved by the Bell where we have the pink around it, but we get the blurry edged border.
Yes.
And we get the fantasy where, this is where we get Tisha Campbell really, you know, getting to do her stuff. She's in this ridiculous fat suit and she's holding multiple plastic babies and they're having this whole crazy argument.
She's
and then
ironing and she's eating like ring dings.
And then at some point she just like accidentally plops out a baby, gets upset and kicks it. Like,
well, her water breaks.
Yeah.
And while she's holding two babies and she's like, I didn't even know I was pregnant. And then she like tosses the two babies to Martin that she's holding. There's like 4 other babies on the couch. And then she leans over and she's like doing these like deep knee bends because she's like, like giving birth. And she's like, damn it. Yeah. I didn't know I was pregnant. And then, you know, baby pops out and she kicks it. Yeah. It's very funny.
That thing of her just like offhandedly kicking the baby, like, to be clear, in any other context would be a very disturbing notion. But this, funny. Just going back to the crazy chinchilla monster and the vacation episode of Martin, just the way that they love these little toys and dummies and stuff. It's very funny. So that's Martin's fantasy is, you know, I'm going to be married to this
nightmare,
old cow. And then we get Gina's
and
fantasy.
that he's working 5 jobs and that she just wants his money. She doesn't care about him anymore.
Just this generally sort of like miserable, like the drudges of married life.
Right.
Which is funny because to me, I look at that and I'm like, I get that that's not ideal, but I'll take like this fantasy over like having to hang out in clubs and bars and stuff. Like, are you kidding? Like, it's not that bad. And then we get Gina's fantasy, which is going to be, you know, her friends tell her Martin is just going to be a total dog, you know, you're going to be stuck at home.
He's going to cheat on you.
Yeah, and so we get her thing of like, in her fantasy, she's like Hillary Clinton or something. She's coming home.
Hilarious because she walks in and, you know, like we said, the voice that she does as Gina is a little bit baby talk. Like it's a little, Martin, why do you always do this? Yeah. You know what I mean? She has this little like baby talk kind of thing that she does with that voice. She walks in her fantasy nightmare thing. And she's in a pantsuit and she's been at work and she's like, Martin, I've spent all day. And she has this like white girl voice. But I'm just like, what is happening?
It's her fantasy of the exaggeration of, yes, I will be a refined businesswoman. And Martin is just going to be this low life that, you know, he's got some girl in a maid outfit. He stashes her in the closet and he's got a dominatrix coming out with whips and chains and stuff.
Yeah.
And you know, it's exactly the sort of worst case scenario.
And she's like, you know, her friends planted the seed that she just would never see it. Like she would believe all of his lies because she would be blinded by love. And that's like her nightmare. And so then she wakes up and was it that made her say, that's it, I'm out of here and march down the hall?
Yeah, basically we have another funny slapstick part where that big lumbering stripper guy goes, he decides to just hop out the window. So he goes, see you later. He was going to crawl
down the fire escape to go down to the other apartment, back to the thing.
And then we hear him just plummeting out the window and we hear him yell up,
on a car
what happened to the fire escape? Yeah. Again, like you hear us describe it, it might not sound that good, but they do really nail these little slapstick beats. And then, Gina goes like, it's one thing for him to sleep with other women, but he's not bringing whips and chains around my apartment, and just storms out of Pam's apartment to confront him. And so, yeah, everything kind of comes to a head, right? She busts in
with all the girls, all the women come.
She catches him in the act, fooling around, quote unquote. Now, this,
but
frankly,
not
right. Well, but see, that's what I was saying back in the other one. What Martin is doing here is what I wondered if they meant by fooling around.
No,
quote unquote,
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Family.
So Martin,
he's dancing, he's flirting.
The strippers have arrived, and they're obviously they're like, which one's the groom? And everybody points at him, and so then he's got a girl on each side, and the guys are throwing money at the girls.
To his credit, he says, no, Gina wouldn't allow that. You guys have your fun, but of course,
no. And so he's dancing in between them, and they're like dancing on either side, and the guys are all throwing money at them, and they're clothed. I mean, they're in tight, like bandeaued kind of dresses.
It's fooling around. Literally, he's just goofing around. At least at that moment,
right? I mean, they're just dancing. They're having they're having fun. They're having fun. It's not
certainly
anything
not what you want to see.
But she comes in and she's like, "Oh, are these the magicians? What are they going to make disappear?"
Well, that goes back to what we were saying. Yeah, if it wasn't all steeped in deception and duplicity, then maybe you wouldn't have such a problem. But yeah, she comes in. I don't know. She notices his retired sex jersey, but yeah, she's like, "What's with the girls?"
On the wall.
Yeah, and so it looks like we're going to be on our way to another David Green situation where we have to call off the wedding. They go off into the bedroom or whatever, and we get a kind of sitcom-y, what are we doing here?
Yeah, they both they start the fight by sharing by saying, like, you're not going to have whips and chains in my apartment.
They do.
And Martin's like, yeah, well, you're not going to be 400 pounds and popping out a baby every other day.
They do the sitcom-y thing of referring to their fantasies as though the other person would know what they were talking about.
And they both take that seriously, and they're like, no, of course I'm not going to do that. Like, I'm not, you're my person. Like, I'm not interested in having other women. And she's like, well, what makes you think, why did your friends convince you that we were going to have a baby every other day? Like, that's not possible. And he's like, I don't know what's possible. Yeah. And she's like, you need to calm down. Like, we're not having 87 children. Like, that's not in the cards.
He says, well, Tommy and what's his face, they kind of were talking about that. And then Gina says, hey, Pam is pretty persuasive, and she was saying what you were going to do. And so, they kind of come to their senses. What Gina says is very sweet. She says, this party isn't for us, it's for them, our friends. She says, because you and me, we can party together for the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
And that's sort of like, that kind of breaks everything.
And it's like, oh, and then they kiss, and that's basically the end of the episode.
Yeah. And so again, we get, it is a little bit of like a Miller Boyette style ending where everyone kind of hugs and is friends again. But, now we're firmly into sitcom, 90s, bachelor party, all that stuff. We've sort of been over it all. We've got the ladies, we've got the lying, we've got the edible underwear and all that, at least now.
And the friends kind of always having bad things to say about you, A, settling down, and B, the person you're settling down with.
Yes, the notion that the bachelor party is your last chance to be happy or content in any way, because the rest of your life is going to be nothing but a prison of your own making.
That's right. You're going to be stuck with this dick, or you're going to be stuck with this shrew, and it's all your own fault. But the other thing we get is this is the first time where the couple actually has the ability to communicate. Yeah. And so even though it is kind of a Miller Boyette ending, and it does start very heightened and silly with the, like the nightmare sharing, they do have that moment where it's like, where they say, like you said, that this party isn't for us. Yeah. It's for them, because they are sad that they're not us. Yeah. And they want to have a blowout because it makes them sad that they haven't found someone.
Yeah, and that their social world is changing because we're stepping out to a certain extent.
Right. And then also that recognition that, like, they're both choosing this and they're choosing each other, and that it's they get to party together, and isn't this the best? That let them have fun out there. And it's also a thing that happened that I've seen that I feel like happens kind of all the time in many Bachelor and Bachelorette episodes, is that the parties end up combining.
Yeah.
And the friends get to hang out with the friends,
usually,
and they have a good time.
Because of a phone call or some sort of communique that goes like, oh, I'm going over there.
That's right.
I got to put a stop to this.
So it's because of the suspicion, right?
Yeah. There's a good movie called Bachelorette with Lizzie Kaplan and Rebel Wilson and Kirsten Dunst.
I remember that movie. That is
kind of
good.
has a similar sort of storyline. But yeah, so the way this is kind of evolving over the years is pretty interesting. The way we have, starting with Lucy, where you can only vaguely hint at, the goings on at a bachelor party, and then All in the Family, where you can be more explicit, but it's still off camera. And now here with Martin, where the episode is going to take place in the bachelor party with the strippers, with the penis pasta and the edible underwear and all that. And now finally getting into the 21st century, we're going to reach the point where we get the postmodern bachelor party, where we don't need the strippers and the naughty pasta.
But we still need the penis hats.
Yes. Well, the ladies, I think, have not gotten the memo. I think now bachelorette parties are the ones that get all wild and stuff. But yeah, let's get into it. Let's move on to Parks and Recreation.
Season 5, Episode 10, 2 Parties.
Yeah, so like we said, this is going to be kind of the postmodern one. We're now into the world where this pressure to have strippers and hookers or whatever has kind of gone away.
Right. There's always the one friend, like I was saying in this case, of course, Tom.
Yes, Aziz Ansari. Of course, there's going to be a horn dog character. It is still a sitcom. But yeah, when the couple in question is Adam Scott's character, Ben, and Amy Poehler's character, Leslie Knope, this show has a very sort of benevolent, humanist, kind of nice vibe to it, even though it's very, very funny. So you just know it's not going to be that, That's not to say it's all going to be like Mr. Rogers and stuff, but you can count on Mike Schur and the Parks and Rec team to kind of give you something that is very funny, but also sort of has this like niceness to it.
Yeah. And so we've got the same sort of a similar setup here as we had in Martin. We've got the Bachelor and Bachelorette parties happening simultaneously.
Yeah.
And Ann Perkins, played by Rashida Jones, is stressing out because she has to throw Leslie Knope, the queen of throwing parties and the queen of making things special and perfect.
Just planning everything and just overachieving.
She's got to throw her a bachelorette party. So she's like, totally freaked out and no. And they see the guys in the hallway at work. Chris, played by Rob Lowe, is the best man. And so he's throwing Ben's bachelor party.
Yeah. And he's a similar thing in the sense that he is very much just like excellence in all ways.
Right. Right. And so, and very kind and happy. Yeah. So there's a little kind of like tit for tat thing where Anne's like, oh yeah, we're going to have strippers and we're going to have the coolest stuff. And we've got all sorts of little penis gummies and we've got penis hats and penis necklaces and all, and she's just kind of like, your party's never going to match up, Traeger. They're like, yeah, we're playing board games and beer because that's what I wanted, kind of a thing. And so she's got this sort of rager, in quotes, planned for Leslie's house. And the guys are going to go play Settlers of Catan at Ben's house. Yeah.
Adam Scott's character, Ben, has requested, they asked me what I want to do. This is what I want to do. And yes, this is, again, the kind of modern guy that's just like, no, let's just do this. And that's, sort of acceptable to everybody. They have T-shirts made of like the board game, like they have
it says board games and beer.
Okay,
I think
that's what it is. Are Rob Lowe and Rashida Jones, are they a couple at this point in the show?
And I think they're beyond the part where they had that sort of weird thing for a while where they had broken up and he was just like, he's so nice all the time that she couldn't tell if he was into her again and she kind of had a crush on him. They're past all of that.
Yeah. Ben has this funny little, talking head monologue where he says like, I'm just so excited about the 7 contiguous segments of my, like he's breaking down all the.
So
ins and
he's
outs.
nationally ranked as a Settlers of Catan player.
Yeah.
And he's very excited. And he's like, guys, if you don't want to play, I totally understand. Like, it's not even really going to be fair. I'm nationally ranked. And then he kind of smirks at the camera. And Chris Pratt, right? Andy and maybe Jerry, they don't play. Settlers of Catan is just a 4-person game. I'm also a board game nerd, but not nationally ranked. And so played. two of the guys, because there's all 6 of the guys that are kind of regular on the show are there at this bachelor party, and the 2 guys don't play. They are like, we'll just have to watch the game while you guys are playing. Oh darn.
Yeah, of course, this show does a great job of what most workplace shows try to do, of show you the different worlds that these people come from. So we haven't mentioned Nick Offerman's character, Ron Swanson, yet, but he's obviously one of the secret weapons of this show. Everybody loves him. And so, between his character, Aziz Ansari, Amy Poehler's character, like it does such a good job of bringing you all of these sort of worlds. To wit, when Aziz Ansari finally convinces them, let's go out and do something, and Ben is like, okay, that's fine, that's fine too. He's agreeable to that.
Yeah, we did my thing. Like, if everybody wants to go out, we can go out.
Right. So they switch over to this whole other thing that they're going to kind of spoof. These weird, pretentious concept bars.
Right. So they go to this place called Essence, and it is, they are famous for molecular cocktails.
Molecular mixology.
Yes. So they make molecular cocktails, and of course they're having so much fun with this, right? Like, I've been to a molecular mixology bar. There definitely is the thing where like there's the smoke or the steam that comes out and you inhale that and it is alcoholic. Yeah. That was one of the ones they did. But then they brought scotch for Ron, and it's a lotion, and the waiter's like rubbing it in his hands, and he's like so uncomfortable.
Yes.
I don't think that's a thing, but it was very funny.
Exaggerating it. There's a point where
There's
Ron
like the
goes
vodka shots that are a flash of light.
Yeah.
I loved that.
Yeah, it's everything except drinking it. And there's a point where Nick Offerman goes, "Can I ask if this entire establishment is a practical joke of some kind?"
Because it's in an airplane hangar. It's huge and white.
Yeah, like, just very 2010s hipster kind of
very
thing.
Tom Haverford, right? Like, to me, this isn't 2010s hipster because it's too ridiculous. It is Miami. Like, this is so Miami.
Certain things about it, though, the makeshift space and even
you're right.
the sort of trendy concept. It's something that you might see even like sort of spoofed on in a different way on Succession or something the weird lifestyles.
So what they realize while they're at this bar is that none of them have ever had a bachelor party. So Ron's been married twice, never had a bachelor party. He says Tammy 1 forbade it. Tammy 2 called in a bomb threat to the steakhouse, so he was thwarted. Tom Haverford is married, but it was he was like, it was a green card wedding, so I didn't have a bachelor party. And then Gary had he was like, I had an emergency appendectomy right before the wedding, and then they cut him off. They let him finish
his story. Yeah. And so, even this is kind of bringing in a modern touch, like the reality that, truthfully, a lot of people just don't even have bachelor parties.
Right.
It's just like, we didn't do that for one reason or another. But so, of course, Rob Lowe's character says, okay, new mission, it's everybody's bachelor party. We're going to pass around the special, bachelor
rotating
boy hat.
bachelor party.
Yep. And we're going to give everybody a moment to sort of have their own, activity. Basically.
Their thing. And so this becomes Tom's. This was where he wanted to go. He really wanted to try this cool new bar. So this is his bachelor party. He puts on the hat. Everybody toasts him. And the whole tenor of the kind of wah lame sort of bachelor party thing that was happening before just changes. And everyone is like, oh, great. So then they start going from place to place. They're having an amazing time. Meanwhile, back at the girls' party, Leslie has realized that something's going on at the lot. So they're at Anne's house, and the whole premise of this whole show starts when there's the big lot next door to Anne Perkins'
there's
house.
a Native American site that's being bulldozed.
Well, it's not Native American. It's the empty lot that was a pit next to her house. This is the pilot of Parks and Rec, right? And so this whole, like, so many seasons spent trying to figure out how to fill in this pit and do something with this empty lot that, is dangerous for the people in the neighborhood. So Leslie's idea is make it into a park. She's almost there. Like, it's almost about to happen. But her fellow council member, Jam, that stupid dickhead guy who looks literally like Beavis from Beavis and Butthead, except with brown hair.
We saw him in the Wait, Don't Tell Me thing.
Right. He is, he wants to build a paunch burger on the place. And so what Leslie realizes during the bachelorette party is that there is a backhoe out there and development is happening, and it shouldn't be because they both have 2 more weeks to pitch the rest of the council on their competing proposals. So she realizes what's going on. She has this confrontation with Jam, and he's like, sorry, you snooze, you lose. Like, we're doing it now, and nobody's going to be able to stop us because once they see the paunch burgers going in, nobody cares about your proposal. Nobody cares about your park.
There's a funny little cameo from Mike Mitchell from the Doughboys podcast where the billboard that they're putting up for the Fat Burger says, like, come and eat it, you idiots, or something like that. And he's just walking by as this random townsperson, and he's like, oh, cool, Fat Burger, can't wait. And so, like, Leslie realizes, like, as usual, you have to save people from themselves with this stuff.
And so she's like, oh my God, I've been thwarted. This sucks. So she goes back into the bachelorette party and is like, bachelorette party off. Like, we need to figure this out. And Anne's like, no, come on, let's play games. Let's do this. Leslie sneaks away, goes back to the office, gets a bunch of Native American artifacts that they have in the office, smashes them, and buries them in the pit because, and she gets a little talking head with the camera where she's like, so there's a law in Pawnee that all development has to stop until we can, figure out if this is, sacred ground. Yeah. And so she's like, I've just bought myself, however much longer. And then in the talking head, she realizes that she's like laughing, and she realizes she's evil. Like, she's done the bad thing now. Yeah,
which honestly, I think her plan is pretty good. Like, I don't know, maybe it's messed
bad.
up.
Like, that's really awful. You can't fake a sacred Indian, like, Native American burial ground or whatever.
That's true,
you
but
can't
honestly,
do that.
It's like, as a means to an end, like, it kind of makes sense. You also probably shouldn't be messing up the ancient trinkets in the first place.
No, I know.
Yeah, she has immediate regret about this. We should also mention, though, as far as tracking the bachelor party tropes, when she has to leave the bachelor party, they're being entertained by Babe Lincoln, right? An Abraham Lincoln stripper. And so when she shuts it down, she goes, I'm sorry, everybody, I'm just not in the mood for historical nudity right now. Great Leslie Knope line. Yes. And so, she goes, just like you said, she buries these artifacts and then is immediately like, shit, I've just made things worse.
I'm the evil one. So she goes and she tells her friends, we have to go, sorry, I'm not in the mood for, historical nudity. We need to go dig up these artifacts. We have to undo what I just did.
Yeah.
So her bachelorette party turns into all of them in a pit digging up the artifacts that she just buried.
Aubrey Plaza realizes that their penis hats make good shovels for digging.
And this is the only one. So they mention the penis accoutrement in Martin, but they're all like on the table, purposefully placed in such a way that you can't see any of it.
Yeah.
In this one, we get lots of blurred out things, and they're wearing the penis hats, and they just pixelate out the the dong on top of their heads. Yeah. And April wears, or has the penis hat with her throughout the most of the episode. So we always have this blurry thing. So they finish digging up as much as they they can find. They're all dirty and sweaty and gross. They're back in Ann Perkins' house, and the guy's call from one of the cars as they're off to the next stop. I think it's Jerry's ice cream shop. So they're having like the time of their lives. They're all like so happy, and they call Anne to, you know, tease her that their bachelor party is way better than hers, while they're all like dirty and sweaty and gross, and her bachelorette party plans have totally fallen apart. And so she's like, and they're like cheering in a car and off to the next thing, and we're headed to the stadium or whatever. And she's like, that's it. We're turning this party around.
But we also get the funny reversal of the lying thing, because we get Rashida Jones going like, oh, hey, I can't hear you over all these strippers. Oh, hey, Leslie, stop touching that guy's wiener or whatever. And it's like, they're not, you know, they're in the plot digging up.
Right. And
artifacts.
April's yelling for the background. She's like, she's like, Anne, who are you lying to? And Anne's like,
So that's just kind of funny how far we've come. But and then the guys are on their way to the Indianapolis
Colts Stadium.
And we get little roles from a handful of football players that I'm going to say are about on the acting level of John Dwyer or whoever that baseball player was that showed up in the Donna Reed episode. Little bit of a stiff actor, and that's what we get from these football players, but it's still very fun.
One guy, the one guy isn't so bad though. I think he was like a running back or wide receiver guy. He wasn't so bad, but man, the quarterback, Andrew Luck, oof, I was like, please don't let him talk anymore. Yeah,
it is one of those things where it's like, okay, guys, the actors are going to do everything. They're going to say 90% of the lines. They're going to be all silly and wacky and make total fools of themselves. And all you football players have to do is go like,
go along.
Yeah, or like, I don't know about that, or maybe next time.
Hey,
or something.
man, they can't all be Peyton Manning.
They don't always pull it off. They meet Newt Gingrich. The guys meet Newt Gingrich at a restaurant.
Yeah, so when they get to Ron, for Jerry, they go out for ice cream. For Andy, they go to the Colts Stadium and they get to play football on the field, and he kicks a field goal and he catches a touchdown pass from Andrew Luck. Yeah, I mean, he's like, they're having a great time. And then for Ron, they go to a steakhouse, which just happens to be called St. Elmo's Steakhouse, which I, of course, love because Rob Lowe was in St. Elmo's Fire, and that was when he was young, and I was in love with him. And so
most people are still in love with him at this time. He still looks great.
It's true. He wasn't as funny back then, though. He never got to play those funny roles. Now I love how funny. Yeah, he was like a total dick in that movie. But anyway, so for Ron, they go to a steakhouse, and it just so happens, and according to Aziz Ansari, Newt Gingrich just happened to be eating at the restaurant when they were filming.
I could see that.
And so they said, hey, you want to be in the episode? And they have this funny little moment where there's like four of them are in one car, two of them are in another car, and they're sitting at the wrong table. And Jerry's last name, or Gary's last name, or whatever, is Gergich.
Okay.
And so he thought this was his table because he was like Gergich party or whatever, and this was Gingrich party. Okay. And so he comes over to the table and is like, this is our table. And he's like, oh, my bad. And Tom's like, yeah, there's 6 of us and this is only a table for 4, so we should go. And that was a little Gingrich cameo.
Yeah, I thought maybe it was supposed to tie into Ron's libertarianism, but it wouldn't really make sense. Gingrich wouldn't be a good match for that.
No, it didn't. And they didn't end up introducing him or doing anything more than just having that moment with them at the table and the Gingrich like joke with the last name. And so, yeah, and then they have a nice steak, and he finally gets a real scotch that isn't a lotion.
Yeah.
Is that everybody? That's Tom.
So.
That's Andy, that's Ron, and Ben. So the only one they don't get to is Chris, and they do him at the end of the episode, right?
Yeah,
and they did Jerry as well.
Yeah, what are they? Well, the ultimate thing that he has going for him is this recurring character of the TV reporter that always gets called in, for these Machiavellian things, right?
Right.
Rob Lowe gives this whole speech about like, oh, don't worry about me, guys. Someday I'll find somebody that, believes in causes, and he just, sort of describes his perfect person. And And when they're talking to this reporter and they're like, yeah, this guy, he organized this event so that everybody would have their own experience and stuff. And she thinks it's such a great idea. And we sort of get this nice little hint that, okay, they're setting up a little romance here. They're going to introduce Rob Lowe to this reporter character. And that's sort of the end for him. He busts out the t-shirts that were designed for the board game concept. And they're all like, cool, we got Bachelor Party t-shirts. They don't, resemble what the thing turned out being, but who cares?
Yeah, it was super fun. They had a blast. And then Leslie comes clean.
Yeah, to the Native American
chief,
guy that she's been working with.
Right, who was going to like help her do the park. And then he just kind of laughs and is like, oh, don't worry about it. Like, I mess with white people all the time.
He's a great character. We've got lots of him throughout the episode. But yeah, we get exactly. He's like, leave it to me. I'll cover for you.
Yep. And so he kind of turns it all around. And Leslie doesn't actually have to like confess that she buried the items. But they realize that these items are not ancient and they're newer because they had come from the casino and they were just on display. And so it wasn't, they weren't actually like artifacts, and the digging, could commence. But he kind of plays this little game where he, leans into the like white people guilt. And so Councilman Jam is like, he says to him, if you go back on this deal with Leslie, it's reminding me of, when the settlers first came and went back on the deal with my people. Yeah. And so, Councilman Jam's like, well,
not
okay.
to mention, he also gives some teeth to it by going, and there's 6 of your fatty burgers or whatever in our casinos. Maybe it's time to look at those leases again. And the woman goes, is that a threat? And he goes, yes, I thought that was clear.
And so they're like, all right, let's put this on hold. So Leslie, just like all the guys at the bachelor party, ends up not really having a bachelorette party. So now maybe later on down the road, we'll get an episode where all the girls get to have a little fun.
Yeah, it's very funny in that last scene when the guys are kind of, it's the morning and they're looking back on things, handing out the t-shirts. And Rob Lowe goes, I just remembered we left Jerry at the gas station in Martinsville. And he just hops in his car. Later. Yeah, and drives away. But yeah, as far as tracking the trope, again, I mean, we didn't get the strip club per se. We got all the bawdy stuff with the women, which I'd say sort of matches real life. Like, I think at this point, it's kind of like the ladies' turn in general to be all crazy with the bachelorette parties. And, again, I'm wildly generalizing. Of course, there's lots of guys out there that still like to go to the strip clubs, and God bless you. But I feel like now it's more of the norm to be like, yeah, me and my buddies are going to go do whatever I like to do. And the ladies are going to, go eat penis pasta and wear penis hats and stuff like that.
Yes, which is exactly the same thing as looking at naked women and hoping they grind on you.
Or go to the male strip club then, for that matter. Yeah, I don't know. Looking back on these, what do we think? What's our favorites?
Oh, man, this was a really fun lineup for the reasons that I've enumerated about just the female characters. Really, really fun to do a Lucy and a Gina in a same episode. Like I said, wish we had a little more Edith so we could, compare all 3 of them. But I think Maude was my favorite just because it's a show I know, but it's not a show I've seen. So this was, to me, a great pilot. Like, if I was a fan of All in the Family, I think, if I was, alive in 73 or whenever this was, 72, I think that I would definitely have been like, ooh, I want to watch that next season.
I hasten to remind you we were watching an episode of All in the Family.
No, so. I know. But like I'm saying, as a backdoor pilot, It was effective in that way. And so the episode is called Maude.
I know.
Thank you very much.
Well, but I'm just saying it's funny how we kind of criticize that in our Backdoor Pilots episode. It's like, this is a little bit of shenanigans what you're pulling here. But I agree, it's handled much, much better. And
I appreciate it for all it was. And to me, it was an effective Backdoor Pilot. I am intrigued. I want to go see more Maude. I wanted to go see more Maude anyway for all of the other shows that spun off of it that I like. So I think definitely would be interested in that. But I mean, Lucy. I think Maude and Lucy. All in the Family and Lucy are my two favorites in this. And, but like, I loved Martin too, but there just wasn't as much of the like, Martin and Gina sauce as there usually is. So I think I Love Lucy for all the shenanigans and Maude for being, or All in the Family for being an effective backdoor pilot.
Yeah, the Maude one is really fun. Again, I didn't know much. Like, I know what everyone knows about Maude. It was a sitcom with B. Arthur before the Golden Girls, you know? And I kind of figured, like, oh, she's going to be a grouchy old lady. And of course, I mean, grouchy middle-aged lady. But
I knew it was very feminist. Like, I think there was that thing of Mary Tyler Moore, and the Mary Tyler Moore Show was considered this, like, feminist icon. And then a few years into their run, she became not like a feminist icon. She was too old fashioned, and things like Maude started happening. And so it was this weird time where just within a few years, someone who had been a feminist icon was being replaced.
Yes, you live long enough to become the villain. And that's, exactly what this show is exploring. Like we said, by having the two generations of progressive, feminist women. And so, that was really intriguing. And I would want to watch more Maude. Two, I'm kind of on the same page with Martin. It was great as usual, but, again, Martin is always great. And so it's sort of par for the course. I think the Parks and Rec one is really great just for the reasons that we always say about the sort of top tier newer shows. Like they can do so much that the older ones can't. The whole single camera format and just so many more resources and just the top notch people, from the writers and everything to Leslie and then, Aziz Ansari and everybody. So that's really, really solid. But for me, look, I think I laughed harder at Lucy and Ethel walking in those Monopoly Man clown outfits than I did at anything we've watched for this podcast. I think like that was really, really funny to me. And so, just plus all the time capsule stuff of what, the whole like backwards way that they're thinking about everything in that show. That's got to take it from me as just as my MVP. We didn't mention just this one random part I wrote down where when she comes into that bachelor party and she's, oh yeah, I'm the reporter, don't mind me. And she just moseys over to a couple of guys playing poker and she goes, what are you saving kings for, fella? And it's like, love it.
And the guy was like, hey.
Yeah, you're trying to be inconspicuous and not give up your disguise, but you can't resist making some little armchair comment about the guy's poker hand. Very, very funny. So gotta give it to I Love Lucy. But I think this was a really, really good one just for all the reasons that we've talked to death about at this point. Just the way this notion of the bachelor party as a trope in real life has kind of changed over the years, and the way that these TV shows can kind of like give you, I wouldn't call it a funhouse mirror version, but some sort of a weird, cheesy, tacky, contrived, but still somewhat spiritually accurate reflection on what happens in real life, and in that way, it's really interesting. Yeah,
I think what is so interesting about these parties is that I think every single one of them, except Ben's, that turns into a celebration of like just your favorite things to do with all your friends, all of them are disappointing. And I have found that true about almost every one of these parties that I've attended. Like for the most part, they are disappointing. It's like New Year's Eve. You build it up that it's going to be this thing. It's going to be the greatest night ever. We're going to have so much fun. It's going to be like one last time of crazy single, nighttime fun. And it just never is. Just like New Year's Eve. It never is. Like it's never going to live up to the hype. Just do things that you like and set your expectations at I'm going to have a good night, not the best night ever. And that's when the parties are fun, you know, like when we do the spa days or, you know, we go and, like, I think those are the best kind of bachelorette parties because the expectation is we're going to enjoy ourselves. We're going to relax. We're not going to have the best night ever.
Yeah. And in the most general sense, that's what sitcoms do, is just sort of like capture that notion of like, yeah, most of the time things go wrong. It ends up underwhelming. It ends up a mess. So let's all have a laugh at it. All right. So much for the bachelor parties. What are we talking about next time?
Next week, we are revisiting Jay's all-time favorite, Charles in Charge, the mixtape. We're going to start off with Charles Splits, which comes from our Bonked on the Head New Personality episode. Then we're going to our Snowed In for Christmas episode, and we're going to watch You'll Laugh from Charles in Charge. Then our Makeover episode, and we watched A Date with Enid. And finally, UFO No from our UFO sightings episode.
Yep, next week is all things Charles in Charge, and until then, we will consider this segment of the sitcom study concluded. Thank you for listening to the sitcom study. Tell us what you think or share your own TV tropes and topic ideas by sending a self-addressed stamped email to sitcomstudypodcast@gmail.com or find us on Facebook or Instagram. And if you like the show, consider leaving a rating or review on your podcast app. It helps us boost those precious Nielsen ratings. The sitcom study is recorded in front of a live studio dog.